I'm Gwen Preston of Resource Maven. I'm here at the Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver in May with Mike Gunning of VR Resources. Mike, I wanted to talk about copper. You guys are obviously exploring for copper as well as precious metals, but copper is, I think, getting less attention than it deserves. There was a new BMO report that came out that captured this growing copper deficit. Their estimates are that between 2025 and 2030, the market will be in deficit on average 5 million tons a year. That's like a quarter of the market. It's a huge problem.
It is. Most people in Vancouver know me from the uranium space. And in 2003, there was about a 45% supply deficit on primary mine uranium. It was a real supply-demand scenario.
Right.
So the price of uranium went from $7 to $140 in like 5 years, but it was real.
Yeah.
I think the world is about to find out that they have taken copper for granted. So when I came out of UBC, for the last 30 years, the solution for copper is go to South America, expand one of the big mines, put another big truck on, and we're fine. And
we're good, yeah.
Now that we're in 2018, I look at my children's generation. The electrification of the world is not trivial.
No.
So even when someone like Friedland himself talks about how important electric vehicles are for copper demand, which is true, I say to myself in my inner voice, even Friedland is understating what's going to happen with copper. Look at a wind farm in the North Sea and see how much copper that consumes.
So much copper.
Look at all the transmission wires from the wind turbine to the station.
Yeah.
Look at all the batteries where they have to store the copper. Sure, look at the electric vehicles, but even the difference between a flip phone 10 years ago and a smartphone.
And a smartphone now.
So don't get me wrong, cobalt, lithium, all these metals are important, but if you look at baseload generation, transmission, usage, like an iPhone, and battery storage, what is the common denominator?
Copper.
Copper. There's 8 to 10 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
And Friedland is understating what is about to happen. And I really think in my lifetime, we have taken copper for granted, and we are about to get that back in our face.
And when we look now at this, I mean, that's the demand side. When we look at the supply side, there's some really interesting ways of laying it out graphically. You can sort of do charts of when projects are coming on stream and how big those projects are, big bubbles for big projects. And basically from here forward, up until now, there have been some larger projects, Las Bambas and whatnot, that have continued to come on stream. But basically from now going forward, there are no big projects.
There are none.
And like you say, we've relied on these big projects. Copper market's a big market, 21 million tons a year.
Yeah.
We've relied on big projects to generate most of that copper, and there literally just aren't any.
So here's what the segue to VR, what I want to do as a solution to that problem is also, Gwen, if you go over the last 10 years and look at how much money has been written down and written off on copper projects, I'm not criticizing projects or countries, but I'll name a few. Pakistan, Mauritania, DRC, Mongolia, heaven forbid Alaska. And one of the reasons we don't have new projects coming on is because of what I would call political risk, jurisdictional risk. Sometimes it's infrastructure risk where you're at 5,000 meter elevation and things are getting expensive. And one of the things that we want to do in VR is give someone a major discovery in copper in a boring jurisdiction like Nevada, where we get a drill permit in 20 days.
Right.
Because, Gwen, it's not just that copper mining companies need new discoveries. They need them in a place where they can develop them and mine them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is what I think people don't realize is in the last 20 years, especially the last 10 years, is how beaten up the global copper mining space is.
And I think that's going to produce two kinds of opportunities. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for investors who recognize that the copper price has to strengthen going forward. So to just invest in copper producers and make money on cash flow the side of it. And then there's the opportunity for the explorers, those teams that are out there with the kind of perspective that you have, looking for these new discoveries. From the small scale all the way through to the big, they're all going to be necessary because the supply gap is so significant.
So what you're saying is that what investors need to realize, you make money in two places in our business. discovery here and cash flow and a good operation here.
Yeah.
And you're right, the price of copper goes up and Escondida is going to make more money. Teck is going to make more money in Highland Valley, and that's true.
Yeah.
But if you are discovering during that price cycle move, as I was fortunate enough to do in uranium in the basin with Hathor and Rough Rider, you have the excitement of a discovery in the market with the excitement of the uranium mining companies. They're making money.
Exactly.
They want new discoveries. And so in my case, here's an example of Fukushima happens. It wipes out 35 to 80% of our entire industry. Gone.
Oof. In an instant.
A year later, Rio Tinto writes a check for $650 million for Rough Rider. And you say to yourself, wow,
Yeah.
that was not an easy check for Rio Tinto to make. The price of uranium had collapsed. Fukushima destroyed the industry. Rio had taken a write down on Alcan, $18 million.
Right, yeah.
When you make big discoveries, world-class discovery attributes in a world-class boring district like Saskatchewan, when they operate outside of what I would call the macroeconomics, it doesn't matter what's going on over there.
Yeah.
Rio Tinto wanted Rough Rider.
They needed, yeah.
I really think when you can do that in copper in the next couple of years,
Yeah.
the copper mining companies are going to start to make more money. And they are going to want new discoveries.
Yeah.
And I want VR to give them one in Nevada.
I hope that's
Not Pakistan.
right.
We are near a road. We're near a power line. We're near a railroad. We get a permit in 20 days. Nevada's been a mining jurisdiction for 130 years since Comstock. So for VR, the risk is about exploration risk, but the reward profile
is potentially explosive.
It is.
Yeah.
It's because of the scale of the project, the location of the project, and copper.
And the fundamentals of this market, which are just...
I'm telling you, Gwen, we are going to find out as a society just how copper intensive this little electrification project is. And we're going to realize that we don't have enough.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Well, it'll be a really interesting space to watch, and VR is a really interesting story within it. So
Thanks,
best of
Gwen.
luck out there.
We're 4 years into this,
Yeah.
and we have conviction.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to stop.
I know.
Yeah. Thanks, Gwen.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.